Hi, this is Braasch, and I'm the PhD candidate in philosophy at Yale who was falsely accused of racism and whose life was destroyed by the Yale administration, the press, and a global internet rage mob. Thank you so much for returning to my channel to watch another video. As I usually mention, I'm just holding my iPhone in my hand, so I'll try to hold it as still as possible, and I will be reading from a script, which is why I'll be glancing off camera. And I just wanted to thank everyone so much for their very kind recommendations and advice. As I continue to make these videos, I'm going to continue to try to improve their quality. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So in my previous video, I established that I learned from the Yale Housing Director on March 2nd, 2018, that I was being accused of racism, including by a group of Yale Deans following the February 24th incident, despite the fact that I had been told by the Yale Housing Managers that I had done absolutely nothing wrong and not to give the incident another thought. I wish to make clear that I absolutely believe that the Yale Deans were so eager to publicly brand me a racist in order to destroy my life and discredit my work because of the events in the spring of 2015 during my first year in the PhD program in philosophy at Yale. I had been socially ousted from my department by most of my grad student peers for essentially being a civil libertarian, because I stood up for the federal civil rights of a black man who was our only person of color job candidate for a tenure-track position. As I had mentioned in a previous video, I was made aware that the graduate students went to the Yale administration to try to have me expelled. I believe that the only reason why I was not expelled is because the philosophy department faculty stood up for me. After recovering somewhat from the shock that the smear that I was an egregious racist was quote-unquote going around campus, as the Yale Housing Director told me, I decided that I had to take immediate action. I am a licensed human and civil rights attorney and activist who works on the issues of implicit bias and police brutality. This is my career. This is my life. Being publicly branded a racist by the Yale Deans would destroy my life and career and work, including my Saving the World project. I believe that the Yale Deans were fully aware of this. I believe, in fact, that this was their goal. I first reached out to the Yale Housing Director, the Yale Housing Managers, and the resident coordinators, or RCs, of the Hall of Graduate Studies via email. I asked that, first and foremost, for the 12th floor common room either to be closed entirely or closed to parties for the duration of the academic year. I made it clear that I was very concerned for my personal safety, as the students involved in the February 24th incident, who had terrorized me in my own home that evening, obviously knew where I lived. When I met with the Yale Housing Managers immediately after the February 24th incident, they had told me that they would be very happy to simply close the 12th floor common room for the duration of the academic year. However, this request was denied explicitly and specifically by the resident coordinators, and then a subsequent request was ignored by them. This made me very concerned because the Yale Housing Managers had expressed to me their dismay regarding how the RCs had handled the situation on February 24th. They also told me that they intended to reprimand the RCs for insinuating that I had done something wrong that evening. I will go into this in greater detail in another video, but ultimately, and especially in hindsight, I now believe that the resident coordinators of the Hall of Graduate Studies were complicit in my being terrorized in my dorm room for months. I believe that they were working with my attackers. I believe that this was, at least in part, in retaliation against me, because I believe that they felt that they were reprimanded because of me. I next expressed my grave concern that my reputation was being maliciously maligned. I asked to see or to be made aware of the contents of the letter that had been addressed to the grad school diversity dean, Michelle Nearin. I asked to be told exactly what it was that I was being accused of having done or said that was racist. I said that I was prepared to protect my rights and interests via the civil courts if need be. I made clear that I was aghast that Yale seemed to be taking the position that a middle-aged disabled woman who lives alone in Yale's on-campus housing doesn't have the right to take reasonable precautions to make sure that she can enter her dorm room safely without having her life, livelihood, and reputation threatened, and without being smeared across campus as an egregious racist. The Yale Housing Director directed me to address any further requests and inquiries to Dean Nearin. It seemed clear to me that he no longer wished to discuss the matter with me. I immediately sent an email with my concerns to Dean Nearin. I told her that I was in a state of extreme distress. I expressed my concerns for my personal safety as well as my reputation and livelihood. I also stated that I was prepared to pursue defamation litigation if necessary, but that I had absolutely no desire to do so. Dean Nearin said that she would get back to me the following week. I decided that it would be a good idea to go ahead and file a police report with the Yale Campus Police. I filed my report with Officer Grace Schenkel on Friday, March 9th, 2018, exactly a week after I had been told by the Yale Housing Director that I was being accused of racism, including by a group of Yale Deans. I told Officer Schenkel everything that had happened up to that point. On Friday, March 9th, I was walking across campus when I overheard the conversation of a group of presumed students walking alongside me. They were clearly discussing me, though I was not mentioned by name. They mentioned the 12th floor common room of the Hall of Graduate Studies and a party that took place there. They called me a racist who should be kicked off campus and thrown out of school. At the time, I didn't want to think that they knew who I was. At the time, I didn't want to think that I was being stalked. But I now believe this to be the case, and this would not be the last such instance. The following 2 weeks were spring break. I was very grateful for the reprieve from the students. During the 2 weeks of spring break, I attempted to resolve the situation with Dean Nearin. I was not successful, unfortunately. I will go into greater detail regarding my correspondence with Dean Nearin in another video. First of all, she refused to deliberate in writing. She wanted only to meet with me in person, without the meeting being recorded. I refused. And I of course refused. After what I had been told by the Yale Housing Director, I wanted everything in writing. She refused to help me mitigate any of the egregious damage to my reputation and livelihood, and she expressed a callous disregard for my personal safety. She made clear that she had never had and never would have any intention of addressing the fact that I had been terrorized in my own home, in my isolated dorm room on February 24th. She also told me that if I had any further concerns for my personal safety in my dorm room in the Hall of Graduate Studies, that I should move. Let me repeat that. Dean Michelle Nearin, the Yale Associate Dean of Graduate Student Development and Diversity and the Graduate School Title IX Coordinator, told me, as a middle-aged disabled woman living alone in Yale's on-campus graduate student housing, that if I had concerns for my personal safety in my own home, that I should move out, that I should vacate the premises. She also told me that the Yale Housing Director was now denying pretty much everything that he had said to me during our meeting on Friday, March 2nd, 2018. Needless to say, I was dismayed and terrified. It seemed to me that the Yale Deans were determined to destroy my life, livelihood, and reputation, as well as discredit my work. In the next video, I will discuss how I chose to respond, including by eventually contacting the Yale University-wide Title IX Coordinator, Provost Stephanie Spangler. Thank you so much for spending a few moments with me.